It is 9:47 p.m. You're driving home after a 12-hour shift. You're exhausted, running on fumes, and all you want is to get home to your family. Then you see it. Red and blue lights in your rear-view mirror. Your stomach drops. You pull over. The officer walks up to your window. He's calm. He even seems friendly. And then he asks a question that sounds harmless, almost conversational. Hey, where are you coming from tonight? What do you say? Most people, including most immigrants, answer immediately because it feels rude not to. Coming from work, officer. Just left a friend's house. I was at the grocery store. And that's where trouble can start. Not because the question is illegal, but because your answer can create problems you didn't see coming. What I'm about to explain is not a rumor, and it's not social media mythology. It's based on documented civil rights guidance and real court rules about what police can and cannot do during a traffic stop. If you drive in the United States, especially if your immigration situation is sensitive, you need a plan before you ever see those lights. Welcome back to U.S. Policy Brief. My name is Michael. I cover immigration-related policy and rights issues in plain English, so you can protect yourself in real-life situations, like traffic stops, without escalating anything and without guessing. In this video, I'm going to do three things. First, I'll explain why "where are you coming from?" is a question that can be risky for immigrants, even when the officer sounds friendly. Second, I'll break down two catastrophic mistakes people make in response: oversharing and lying, and what each can lead to. Third, I'll give you a simple, respectful sentence you can use to limit the conversation legally, plus a step-by-step script you can follow so you stay calm and don't accidentally create a bigger issue. Before anyone says, "Michael, you're exaggerating," let's ground this in the basics. The ACLU, in its Know Your Rights materials, emphasizes that you have the right to remain silent, and you generally do not have to discuss immigration or citizenship status with police or immigration agents. That principle comes from the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Importantly, those constitutional protections apply to everyone in the United States, citizens and non-citizens. Now, here's another legal piece you need to know, because it affects what happens during traffic stops. In Rodriguez v. United States, 2015, the Supreme Court held that police generally cannot extend a traffic stop longer than necessary to handle the reason for the stop, like a taillight or speeding, without additional reasonable suspicion. That doesn't mean an officer can never ask extra questions. They often can. The key issue is whether the officer is prolonging the stop to investigate unrelated matters without legal justification. So the real danger for many immigrants isn't that the officer asked the question. The danger is what your answers can reveal, and how those answers can create new reasons for the stop to expand, or be passed along to other agencies in certain jurisdictions. Now let's talk about the two biggest traps. Trap number one, the work admission problem. Picture this. You just finished a double shift. You're tired. The officer smiles and says, "Long day. Where are you coming from?" You sigh and say, "Just coming from work." For many people, that's totally harmless. But for some immigration categories, that sentence can be risky if it suggests unauthorized employment. If you're in the US on a B1, B2 visitor visa, on ESTA, or you're undocumented, working without authorization is a serious immigration issue. Now, one sentence at a traffic stop does not automatically prove unauthorized work. There are lawful forms of work, misunderstandings, and context matters. But your statement can become a recorded admission that creates questions later. This becomes even more sensitive in places where local law enforcement cooperates closely with federal immigration enforcement. Some jurisdictions participate in 287G agreements, where certain local agencies are authorized to perform limited immigration enforcement functions in coordination with ICE. Even in areas without 287G, many police departments share information through other systems, and an arrest, sometimes even for unrelated issues, can lead to immigration consequences. So the point is not never speak. The point is don't casually volunteer statements that create immigration exposure when you don't know where the officer is trying to take the conversation. Trap number 2, the lying trap. Some people hear this and think, fine, I'll just lie. I'll say I'm coming from the grocery store. Do not do that. Lying can turn a simple traffic stop into something much bigger. In many states, giving false information to law enforcement can lead to criminal charges such as obstruction, false identification, or similar offenses depending on local law. And if the interaction becomes tied to a federal investigation or a joint task force situation, false statements can carry even more serious consequences. But beyond statutes and charges, here's the practical problem. Lying gives the officer a reason to dig deeper. If your story doesn't fit what the officer observes, your location, the direction you're traveling, what's in plain view, or other facts, the officer may treat you as unreliable, extend the encounter, call for backup, or start looking for additional violations. A $75 fix-it ticket can become a full stop with searches, verification calls, and a much longer interaction, simply because a small lie created a credibility issue. The safest rule is simple: never lie. If you want to protect yourself, you do it by limiting what you say, not by making things up. Now let's cover another common mistake. Trap number 3, the voluntary document trap. During a routine traffic stop, drivers are generally required to provide 3 things: driver's license, vehicle registration, proof of insurance. That's it in most routine stops. Many immigrants, trying to be extra cooperative, hand over additional documents: passport, visa page, I-94 printout, work permit paperwork, even immigration receipts. Usually, this is done out of nervousness, not strategy. But every extra document you hand over can invite extra questions that were not part of the original stop. If an officer asks for your license, registration, and insurance, give those calmly, directly, and nothing more unless you are specifically required by law in your state to provide additional identification. A key nuance: some states have stop and identify rules in limited situations, and if you are lawfully detained, not just casually questioned, you may be required to identify yourself. Also, if you are arrested, booking will involve identity questions. The safe approach is comply with required identification rules, but don't volunteer immigration paperwork unless you are legally required to. Now, one more situation that people need to understand because it changes the environment. Trap number 4, the 100-mile border zone reality. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, claims expanded enforcement authority within 100 air miles of U.S. land borders and coastlines. That zone covers a large portion of the population. In that zone, you can encounter CBP interior checkpoints and immigration questioning that feels different from a local police stop. At a CBP checkpoint, agents may ask about citizenship or immigration status as part of their checkpoint function. You still have rights, but the setting and authority can be different than a city traffic stop, and you should be especially careful about what you say and what documents you present. The big takeaway is know who stopped you: local police, state trooper, sheriff, or federal agent, and where you are. Now that we've covered the traps, here is the practical strategy: a calm, constitutional, non-confrontational script you can actually use. Step 1. Stay calm and don't volunteer information. When the lights come on, breathe. Pull over safely. Keep your hands visible. Turn on the interior light at night if you can. Don't start explaining, apologizing, or storytelling. Wait for the officer's instructions. Silence is not automatically suspicious, and volunteering extra details rarely helps. Step 2. Provide only the required driving documents. Hand over your driver's license, registration, and insurance. Don't reach for extra paperwork. Don't produce immigration documents unless legally required. If you do not have a driver's license, do not lie. Some states allow licenses regardless of immigration status, and some do not. Know your state's rule. Step 3. When they ask, "Where are you coming from?" use a respectful limiter. Here's a simple sentence that works in real life because it's calm and non-escalating. "I'd prefer not to answer any questions." If you want the shortest version, you can use, "I respectfully decline to answer." The goal is not to argue. The goal is to avoid giving a statement that creates new problems while keeping the encounter respectful. Step 4. If the questions continue, ask one key question. If the officer keeps pushing, calmly ask, "Am I free to leave?" This is not disrespectful. It's a legal clarity question. If the officer says yes, you leave calmly. If the officer says no, you are being detained, and you should stop answering questions beyond what is required for identification under your local law. At that point, you can say, "I am invoking my right to remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer." Then stop talking. Step 5. After the stop, document everything. As soon as it's safe, write down the time, location, agency, officer name or badge number if you have it, what was asked, and what happened. If your rights were violated, that record can matter later, especially if immigration consequences arise. Now, a special note for green card holders. If you are a lawful permanent resident, your constitutional rights still apply. You do not have to answer, "Where are you coming from?" or "Where are you going?" just because you have a green card. However, U.S. immigration law does require lawful permanent residents age 18 and over to carry proof of registration, commonly your green card. In reality, not every traffic stop turns into an immigration document demand, but you should understand the rule and consider the risk of not carrying it. Also remember, a local traffic officer is not automatically an immigration officer. Most routine traffic stops are about traffic enforcement. Your goal is to keep the stop narrow, calm, and focused on the reason you were pulled over. We are in a time when immigration enforcement policies, local federal cooperation, and data sharing can change quickly. That's why knowledge of your rights matters, but it also matters how you use them. The safest approach is respectful, calm, and minimal. Before you click away, do one thing. Think of one friend or family member who drives regularly and would answer, "I'm coming from work," without thinking, especially if they're on a status where that could cause complications. Send them this video. It can prevent a small traffic stop from turning into a much bigger problem.